y'all, and welcome to another Wedding Wednesday. My name is Jane Corley with Pic Visions, Media Arts and Photography. If it's your first time here, welcome. Make sure to like this video if you learned something new, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell so you can be notified every time a new video is uploaded every week. In today's video, we're going to talk about catering. What are the questions that you need to ask when you're shopping for your wedding caterer? Let's get started. First, you need to be ready for your visit. You need to have as much information as you can possibly come up with before you actually go and talk to a caterer. The things that you need to prepare for before going to your caterer is make sure you have an idea of your budget, your guest count, and your date. If you have those three options, you'll have a very good place to start from when you go and talk to your caterer. Next, start asking fellow brides, friends that you know have gotten married in your area, reviews, testimonials, all of the information that you can get based on the reliability of those caterers that you're going to visit. The best time to pick out a caterer for your event is going to be between 7 and 9 months prior to your event. Before that, you can focus on a few other things. If you're able to find a caterer that is local to the area where you're getting married in, whether you're going to a destination or you're getting married in your hometown, find a caterer that is local to that area, and that will save you a little bit of money in the long run. That way you won't have to pay for travel fees, you won't have to worry about them transporting your food items to a new location. Before you go and visit with a caterer, another thing to be mindful of is to have your finances in order so that you can be prepared to pay the deposit. The deposit to your caterer can be anywhere from 30 to 50% of your total catering fee. So just be prepared to make that payment sooner rather than later so your caterer can hold your date. Next to consider before you go to your catering visit is to think about with your fiancé, what type of service do we want? Do we want a buffet style? Do we want serving stations? Do we want full 4 or 5 course meal for our guests? Do we want just past hors d'oeuvres? Think about the flow of the event and the type of service that you're wanting to acquire. Also think about cocktail hour. Do you want to have one? Do you want to have hors d'oeuvres, beverages, all of that passed along to your guests while they're waiting for you to come down and make your grand entrance? Also, having a rough idea of the start and end times that you have with your venue is also a good start to bring to your caterer. If you can tell your caterer, I need to book you from 12 p.m. to 11 p.m., that will give them a good idea of how to block out time for your event on that day. If you've already been to your venue and have that nailed down, it will also help you to bring the information from the venue to your caterer. This includes how early can the vendor set up to start organizing for your event. Is there available ovens, warming stations, refrigerators at your venue location, or will your caterer have to prepare for that? If you can find a venue that your caterer has already worked with and already has a successful relationship with, that's even better. So let's jump into the basic questions to start asking your caterer. First and foremost, do you have my date available? First, that's what you have to ask first. Do you have my date available? Next question to ask is how many weddings do you do on average every year? And how long have you been in business? This will give you an idea of how experienced that catering company is and how their flow works and how much practice they have servicing weddings. Also, ask them if they have any other weddings or events in that same weekend. You really want them to prioritize your event as much as possible, and if they have 4 weddings in one weekend to serve, yours is just another one on their list. You want to make sure that you have the best service from them, so if you can have them prioritize your wedding only on that day, you'll be more successful and there will be less mix-up potential and less variables to worry about. If you're traveling and having them travel with you, you don't want them to be all over the place having to mix up your wedding versus their wedding and other events that they have that same weekend. Next question to ask is, have you ever done an event at the venue that our wedding is taking place? If they have experience within that venue location, they will have prior knowledge to the flow and the timeline of that venue space. What has worked successfully and what has worked unsuccessfully, and maybe a few additional tips and tricks to go and meet with that venue that you may have not even thought of or your venue has not even told you about. So finding experienced caterers that have worked with your venue before will make for a successful catering experience. Your catering vendor has a lot more information to offer than just what's going to be on your guest's plate. Next question to ask is, who is going to be the point of contact for the day of your wedding? Who are you going to need to put your wedding coordinator in touch with, maybe your maid of honor in touch with? Who do you need to associate as your point of contact on the day of your wedding so that you know who to pass all of the information to, and if anything goes wrong, you'll know who to find and talk to? The next question to ask your wedding caterer is, do you have package options for catering, or is everything a la carte? What are the menu options that we have to choose from? The next question to ask your caterer is, where is your food from? Where does your produce come from? Where does your meat come from? Where do you get all of your materials from? As well as, what would be some easier or more beneficial, more delicious dishes based on the time of year? For our wedding, we lucked out to have in the spring fresh vegetables. So we chose this really delicious roasted vegetable medley. It had some squash and some other good stuff, some fresh tomatoes. It was delicious because those vegetables were fresh. Those vegetables came from a local farmer's market in the Savannah area a few days prior to our event, so they were so good. If you can find little tidbits of what might be better based on this time of year, your wedding caterer would love to give you this information. This is also a really great time to ask your caterer about any dietary restrictions, or if you're wanting organic or locally sourced materials for your wedding, just based on whatever you would like your menu to be. This is also a great question to ask your caterer at this time. Be mindful to also ask your caterer about any kosher, vegan, vegetarian, gluten allergies, all that good stuff at this point in time as well. The next question to ask your caterer is, do you assist with decor? This may include your caterers setting up the chargers, setting up the centerpieces, setting up any of the decor or decorations that are going to be on your buffet line or on any of the serving stations. Ask them if they assist with decor, or you might need to just have your wedding venue coordinator or your wedding coordinator or day of coordinator handle those issues for you. But be mindful to ask your caterer if they assist with decor. Next question to ask is about kids' meals. Does your caterer provide discounted meals or half-price meals for children? If you don't have children at your event, you don't have to worry about it. But if you know you're going to have 4 or 5 kids that are going to be at your event, you're going to want to have discounted meal options for those few children that might be at your event. Now, if you're going to have 20 or 30 kids at your wedding, this kids menu option, having half-price meals or discounted meals for the children, is going to drastically change the pricing of your catering menu. Next question to ask is vendor meals. Are they going to provide an overage for DJs, band members, your officiant, any extra personnel that are other vendors? Typically, caterers will actually provide anywhere from 5 to 8%. Ours actually did 10%, which was a huge surprise, for our extra vendor overage charges. If you are still in need of a cake decorator, some caterers will actually also do cakes. This brings me to my next question. Do you do cakes? If you want to have an all-inclusive catering with cake involved, maybe even a dessert bar, ask your caterer if they also do cakes and desserts. Now, if you do choose an outside baker or cake designer to do your cake, ask your caterer if it's going to be an additional charge for them to cut your cake. I know it sounds kind of silly, but ask. Some caterers do, some caterers don't, but just ask. You won't know unless you ask. Next question to ask your caterer is what happens with the leftovers? If we have leftovers from our wedding, where do those leftovers go? Our caterer actually had an option of donating the remaining food to a local shelter in the area. All we had to do was provide, metallic roasting pans for them to put those foods in, and then they would take them to the local shelter and donate. If they have an option for your guests to take the leftovers home, you will probably also need to bring takeout boxes. So just ask what happens to the remainder of our food after our event is over. Next question to ask your caterer in the basics is going to be, what is the server to guest ratio? If they have anywhere from one server to every 30 or 40 people, you'll have somewhere between 4 and 5 servers at your location. The more servers you have, the budget's probably going to be a little bit higher because you're going to have extra personnel to pay for. But you also need to know how quickly your guests are going to have refills on their refreshments, or if they're going to have their tables bust. Find out what the server to guest ratio is for your catering staff. Next, we'll move into what can the caterer provide for your event. Do they provide linens, flatware, place settings, glassware, chargers, the pallets that go underneath your table setups if you want that decor item, any kind of table runners, any sort of extra sparkly tablecloths for your head table? What sort of decor accessories or pieces and parts of the catering dining experience are they able to provide? This will narrow down if you need to add rentals or if you need to be mindful of getting tables and chairs. Caterers will provide or have these in their inventory to provide to their clients if you ask for them. So if you find your venue and you don't have tables and chairs and linens and all that good stuff, ask your caterer if they're able to provide those items for you. Next question is, do they provide a printed menu for your guests? Now, this could either be a printed menu on the buffet table, a printed menu on each of the serving stations, or even a printed menu on every single guest's plate with what they have choice to eat. So based on what sort of serving style you're going to have at your event, and if they don't, you may have to make them. Next, and this is so important, y'all, it's so important, do they provide cleanup after your event? Who takes out the trash? Where does the trash go? How are things cleaned up? Because if things are not cleaned up at your venue the way that they need to, you are going to get charged extra for it. And it's not just an extra $20 or $30, it's like $500 or $1,000. That's the dollar amount we're talking about if your venue is not cleaned up the right way. The biggest ones to be concerned about is who is doing the dishes and how is the trash being taken out. So ask your caterer how the cleanup process after your event is going to go. Next, do they provide non-alcoholic beverages? So tea, coffee, water, sodas, any of those options that are non-alcoholic beverages. How many options can you add, and what are the fees for charging extra? You can also ask them, do you do tea or coffee at the end of the event if your guests want to have tea or coffee while they're eating their desserts or cakes? Now, going off of this, does this caterer provide bar service? Do they have bartenders that they can have on staff so that you don't have to go find another bartender? If you are going to use them for bar service, is it an option to bring your own bar? Or do you have to use their alcohol distributors that are coupled with that catering company? If you are using them for their bar services, are their bartenders certified to serve in whatever state you are getting married in? Chances are, if that caterer is local and they're providing bartenders, those bartenders are certified. But if you are crossing state lines with bartenders, make sure that those bartenders are certified to serve in that state that you're getting married in. Next question, when we're talking about bartenders from your catering, is going to be corking fees. Is there additional charges every time they open another bottle of wine or open another bottle of liquor? Those additional fees will add up if you go through 50 or 60 bottles of wine or 20 or 30 bottles of liquor. So just ask. Ask and you'll know the answer. Next question to ask your caterer is, if you want a champagne toast at your wedding, can they accommodate for that toast? You got to think about glasses. You got to think about bringing in champagne, but some caterers will provide that service for you. Next section when you're talking to your caterer is to work on your timelines. Work on your timelines for your deposit. Make a plan for how soon and in what increment you can make your deposits. Talk to them about any fees and the deadlines for paying those fees within your deposits and payments that you might need to be aware of, like gratuity. Is gratuity, tipping the staff, is that something that we need to be responsible for, or is it in our original proposal statement? Next, ask them about refunds or cancellations. I'm not saying that I'm jinxing, knock on wood, your event, but things happen, y'all, and expect the unexpected during your engagement period. You got to be flexible. Just ask about refund and cancellation policies, because if you have a natural disaster happen on your wedding day, your catering is not happening. Your wedding is probably not going to happen. But you may have refund policies or cancellation policies, and it's best to ask up front. Ask about what the deadline is for final meal choices. Usually it's between 60 and 30 days prior to your event. And what is the final date that we can give you a final guest count? This is also usually between 30 and 60 days prior to your event. So I know this is a lot of information, but consider this a master list. A master list of questions that you need to ask your caterer. We lucked out with a wonderful caterer in the Savannah area that, out of all my vendors, they were the best. Not gonna lie about it, they were phenomenal. And if you would like to know what their names are, please leave in the comments below. I'd love to answer it for you. They were phenomenal. They were so great to work with. And if you ask all these questions and cover all your bases from the beginning, you won't have any issues with them. You will have full transparency between you and your catering vendor so that no questions will go unanswered. Because there's nothing worse than having an unreliable caterer. I have heard horror stories from other brides of caterers who showed up hours late, who didn't have the materials that they needed, who didn't bring the menu options that they were promising their bride and groom. Have full clarity from the jump so that further on down the road, you won't regret not asking these questions. So if there was something I forgot, please leave it in the comment section below for all of your fellow brides so that they don't miss anything while they're doing their catering vendor shopping. Until next time, I'm Jane Corley with Pick Visions, Media Arts and Photography. Make sure to like this video if you learned something new, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell so you can be notified every time a new video is uploaded every week. Until then, see you later, guys.